Do it though.
All right, welcome back, Coast to Coast Podcast, episode number 40. I know I've been waiting for this one.
Four
It's four
zero.
zero, the big 4-0. We're there. I don't know if I thought when we first started this we'd make it this far, but I'm happy we are. I know we're going to hit
Mm.
50 and we're going to hit 60, and here we go. We got a couple of things going on. It's Thursday, March something, late March 24th or
25th.
something, 25th.
25.
All the days are blending together. This year's flying by way too fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, but the NHL season it's going on. It's trucking along. We're probably getting close to 3/4 of the way through. We might start seeing some teams clinch the playoffs in the next week or two. Like we might as the spread starts to get a
Mm.
little thinner for some teams. But here we are. Welcome, everyone.
It'll be interesting because I know that I like to do the standings predictions, and we did it just a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
But it's going to be nice once we get through trade deadline, and we're going to do our trade predictions or breakdowns, however you want to call it, next week's show. So there'll be that back to back. So we got some real good content coming up for that, anyways, and then I'm excited about that. But let's get into the new update, the most recent thing, anyways,
Yeah.
that just came out. The Canadian government just announced that 7 days is going to be the new quarantine time for players being traded from the states.
Oh, that's good. I didn't.
Now, you didn't see that?
No, I saw you put it there, and I didn't see it. So that's good. At least for Dubois and that set him back right a while. So that's good for Eddie.
Absolutely.
It's gonna make good timing for this trade deadline that's coming up for sure.
Yeah, going to help the Canadian teams for sure. But it's funny because if you read the actual um, presser or whatever, it says all players traded will be whatever, blah, 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 blah. I'm curious if that also is waivers or signings or like, because that's the other thing we got to think of is the NCAA is having their final Frozen Four, I think, in a couple weekends or weekend coming up. And then all their free agents become free agents and can sign with teams, right? So is there going to
Yeah.
be a 14 team quarantine for signings or for European signings, or is it just
Yeah.
trades?
Like
So that's the one thing I picked
it's
up.
such a touchy subject too, because like your average citizen, does our average citizen only have to do it for 7 days now, or or do we still have the 2 week? Like,
Well, with it,
there's a
they
lot
have
of
to
testing.
provide a sequence.
Yeah,
Yeah, they have to provide a sequence of successful tests, and obviously the NHL teams are covering the costs of these
that
tests.
makes
So,
yeah, it's like
like,
an employer
there is a
thing. Yeah.
bit of an exemption idea to it, but let's be serious. Sports are above a lot of shit. So, like,
Whoa.
it's a multi-million dollar
I
industry,
know.
right? It's
I
one of
know.
the probably top 10 industries in the world in terms of generating money. So like it's got to be up there, not as much as gambling,
Yeah.
but probably in the same realm. So especially when you include, North American
No,
football and stuff like
I
that.
personally understand. I was just kind of funny. I always like to look at these things as like grand view. Like, what are the devil's advocates, or what are they going to get up in arms about, or like the Debbie Downers or the Karens of the world? What are they going to be saying about some of these decisions? Uh, Not that I like to
Mm.
give them too much voice all the time, but
But they'll be there.
yeah,
They'll be there.
exactly.
But yeah, so it's nice to see that they announced that. I think it also goes to show that it helps the Canadian teams to kind of start really doing their due diligence. Like there was a bit of talk coming out. I don't know if you heard the talk, but just a little bit of talk of that a lot of teams might be actually looking for the cheap option and not the actual best option. And it looked like there was a lot of teams kind of snooping around at, they need a 3-4, but they'll take your 5-6 just because they cost less than $1 million
Yeah,
and it doesn't cost them much. And I all of a sudden heard that talk go away. So I'm curious to see if the NHL basically
oh,
said, like, look, the Canadian teams aren't going to trade, which is going to affect their future success. Like, we need to find a common ground to allow the
make it.
same playing field for American and Canadian teams, right?
Yeah, it's good because I know we've talked about it in the past too, like how like these Canadian teams might have to get on the move quicker than the other ones. So like you said, it's going to be good. It's glad to see at least Canada going a little bit in that direction too. So it's good stuff. On the same time,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say at the same time we had our first like kind of canceled games in this Northern Division. For
I was going the same way. I was working on the segue too.
It lined up. It lined up well. So we had our first cancellations. Edmonton and Montreal. They canceled all their games this week. I guess COVID protocol is the generic reason that they do that all the time. But
what they're saying is it's a similar situation to what happened with Buffalo not so long ago when was it New Jersey said that they weren't sure about some stuff, and then they went in there and ended up having their COVID delay, and their team got it and all this other stuff, and they weren't very happy. Well, apparently the same situation happened where Montreal and Edmonton, whoever it was, made the complaint that something might be off. And then the reason why they're saying they took immediate action this time and not last time was because the positive test that they got back was actually a positive test for the variant. So knowing that the variant is quicker spreading and whatever and more unknown, they basically didn't want to take any chances with the variant, knowing that it tested for that. They said if it tested the normal strain, they may have acted in a slightly different fashion. So
I didn't hear
there's also that factor as well.
Yeah,
it came out today that's what was part of it. So
damn those variants, man.
Right.
But yeah, I guess that other than it being the first North, I guess there's not much more than what has happened than all these other ones. They might try to figure out how to make it up. They canceled the whole series, so they might not, like we talked about before, they might not even have time to make some of these up down the stretch.
Well,
if it
the
matters.
problem is, though, here's the problem is that Montreal up to this date is the team who has played the least amount of games in the Northern Division. And then now they're missing a week. Yeah. So they were already, I think they said 4 or 5 games back of.
Yeah, we talked about it last week specifically too. Yeah. I remember us talking about it. So they're chasing for that, and then it's like Dallas almost, where now they already had a tight schedule, but now they have more games rammed in there. If they're not healthy and playing at the top of their game, it's going to be a long, heavy, tiresome finish to the season. Yeah, and carry over to the playoffs, and it's if you make it. Yeah, exactly. Well, the Montreal's like they're in that situation too. Like they're right on the border. They're both those teams are right on the border. They're also hurt though. They're missing some guys. I still think Montreal is pretty certain to make the playoffs. I'm pretty confident that they will. Yeah, now that the Calgary curse is over and they've started losing again, we can count them out. Yeah, they're done. But the other thing I want to bring up as well is the other thing that the NHL announced officially as well is the change to the draft lotto process. They said starting this draft onward, they are going to go ahead with the draft. But the two or couple main topics are that it's the lotto for the top 2. So in other words, if you're the top team or the worst team with the top odds for the lotto and 2 other teams win the lottery, the worst you can fall down to is 3, which is good for scouting staffs because then they can at least say, 3 is this guy. At worst, we get this guy, and they plan. Because if and you're like, okay, we might get a center, or we might get a D, but then you're looking at your second pick in the first and a couple picks in the second, and you don't want to end up with 4 D or 4 centers. You want to see what kind of balance you can get as a scout, right? Or using those picks. So like knowing, okay, at worst I get these guys, you can have one of 3 situations instead of one of 5, 6, 7 situations, so maybe. At least the Buffalo Sabres know they're going to be a top 3 pick at this point. So exactly, they're still going to fuck the pick up, but that's a different situation. Sorry, Jesse. Yeah. But the other thing is that you can't win the lottery more than 2 times in a 5-year window. So I don't know. Starting this draft. Yeah, I don't know if you know the answer to this because I was kind of curious. I couldn't find it or didn't really search too hard. I'll be honest. But does winning the lotto, does it only entail coming the top 2? So like if you're a last place team and you get second, does that count as winning the lotto? Yes. Okay. I would imagine it counts as if you win the top 2. If you're 14th, because you can only move up, and that's the other thing is you can move up in max of 10 spots. So if you're the 14th team and you move up to 4,
I don't think that is considered winning the lottery. Like, yes, you did, but you didn't win it to get to the top.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but that's the logic I would follow. But if you win the lottery to get up to the max of those 10 picks into the top two, I think that would be considered winning the lottery, and you couldn't do that.
Okay.
So if you were, 7th and 9th, and then all of a sudden you're the worst team in the league, sucks on you, but you're going to trade your first. You might want to trade your first for somebody else's first, which leads me to a question. If you were second worst team and I was first worst team, we just swapped our firsts, can I win the lottery with your pick?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Am I restricted to my pick? I don't know the answer to that.
I would assume that you could win the lotto because it's technically not your team winning the lotto, it's the other team.
And your odds probably decreased.
Yeah.
If you're the top team, it definitely decreased. But in most plausible of those situations, chances are they decreased, right?
You know what the sad part is they probably didn't think about that.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Wait,
it is a bit of a fantasy or video game.
Like they need to think about these things. They need to bring us on to the NHL to ask the hard, important questions that they're just not thinking about when they're making these decisions. Yeah. Too much boomerish people in one room. They need some millennial thinking in there. We're your guys, right?
Exactly. But it'll be interesting because, like, if you are those teams, now all of a sudden your first isn't worth anything to you. So, like, you start trading your picks for a young roster player, and then maybe it sparks other trades.
I still think if this rule were to be in the league for, let's say, 20 years, the same rule, if they somehow miraculously think this is a rule that they can stick for 20 years, I don't think we'll run into a situation where a team could possibly win 3 times in a row. I just don't think it'll happen.
Probably not, no.
Yeah, so it's like
the only way I think it's plausible and the most likely team, if I had to pick a team right now to get screwed by this, who do you think it would be, or what's your pick? I know I'm asking you on the spot, but still.
I'm going to say probably the Sharks.
That's who I was going to say. Yeah. It's like they're so locked in with contracts. If they're legitimately this bad and they're locked in for that long, they could be locked in at being bad for 3 or 4 years, which could put them in the top 5 for the draft, which gives them a high chance of winning, right? They may never win, which could make this whole
and in theory, I know it's starting this year, but in theory, they won last year, didn't they? When Ottawa won their pick, in theory.
Well, yeah, I guess so, yeah. Maybe. And that now that you bring that up, I mean, maybe it wouldn't count if you swapped first, because if you traded your first, or if I acquired your first after you won it twice in a row, the NHL is not going to tell me I can't win it because your team-owned pick.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Excuse me, the original, like that wouldn't work, right? So you got to think maybe that would. I don't know, but good questions, right?
Good questions, and I'm sure they have subsection E, D, and F to figure these out in their guidelines or whatever.
LMNOP P 2.65 LF.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a code. You need to decode the rules. Jeez. But the important thing about the draft lotto is the next Connor McDavid's on his way.
Oh, of course.
Connor Bedard is the next guy. And it's kind of sad because, like, you know me, I'm a draft guy. Like, I'm a prospect guy. I've heard this guy's name for almost 3 years now.
Connor 2.0.
The guy's he's 15.
Yeah.
I've been hearing about this guy since he's 12 or 13.
Okay, wow.
So, like, it's weird, right? Like, how do you know what a 12 or 13-year-old scouting report of a 12 or 13-year-old is going to translate into a 15 or 18 or 22-year-old, right? Like, that's the magic.
Well, that's you got the pro scouts out there that just know how to read a 12-year-old, which on its own is kind of creepy, but
yeah,
it's an art.
But I mean, it's not that hard because you see the players that stand out at that age. So, the ones who stand out, you're like, okay, if they don't stand out, they probably won't become something unless you're like a Zach Hyman type guy. That guy's actually a super interesting story. I don't know if you knew this, but his dad actually purchased up a bunch of the local leagues so that Zach could play. So he basically just played and 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 played, and now he's in the NHL.
Wow.
So it's just work. Yeah. But
Yeah, no,
what were you gonna say?
I hadn't heard about this guy. That's basically you got your ear to it a lot more than I do when it comes to these prospects. And you
Well,
have
part
it.
of it too is the exceptional status, because there's very few players who get the exceptional status for being able to play in the OHL as what, a 15 or 16-year-old.
Yeah, John
Usually have to be
Tavares was the
17,
first time
18,
I figured
19.
I found out that was a thing.
Yeah, there's five, maybe six players, I believe, who have ever been granted it. I think Ekblad's one, Tavares is one. I remember the other ones off the top of my head. I want to say Robbie Shrimp, maybe.
McDavid,
But
I'm
yeah,
sure.
there's a couple. McDavid, yeah. There's another one that never ended up becoming something, but I can't remember the name. But yeah, so like usually, well, exceptional status, they're that exceptional,
Yeah,
right? So like, if he's already got that, like McDavid did, there's only more technology, there's only more coaching, there's only more, like, if you can break down somebody's stride at 15 and have them work towards what you would consider the best for them, it's a lot easier than waiting and finding a 22-year-old and being like, okay, let's break down the last 5 years of your work
yeah,
to change
seriously.
that. Like, it's a lot harder, right? So I mean, if you get them at the right time and you get them the right coaching, there's really no ceiling. Like,
And
you could
hopefully
be better
by
than McDavid, who
yeah,
knows?
and hopefully by the time a player like this gets in the league, they'll have sorted it out so they're not getting hampered with all these random penalty calls that get pulled, all this bullshit makeup calls, all that stuff.
Yep.
All that stuff like we've been seeing all week. The biggest problem, this is probably the biggest story of the entire week with
Mm.
Tim Peel is going to be like a household name at least for a little while. I'm not one to know
Yeah.
refs names at all, but unfortunately he's going to go down as the scapegoat of this whole situation. All really because he
Yeah.
wasn't aware of a hot microphone, and it reminds um,
Yeah.
yeah. Good old
Well,
Tim.
it is like we all know, we have all heard or heard of situations. We have all been, any of us that have played, seen with our own eyes these kind of makeup calls or controlling the game, managing the game. You know, good, bad. There's good parts to it as well. It's not just all bad. But obviously, that situation, where I wanted to turn it over to you mostly is, I think everyone kind of agrees that, like, it's not great that he's the scapegoat.
Hmm.
Hopefully, things are good between him and the NHL. I'm sure they gave him some sort of severance to just make things good. He was almost done his career anyways. So, I mean, early
Yeah.
vacation before you take your payout anyways. So I don't know if we'll hear the end of it, or if this will be the end of it. But where I think, or where I heard it came from, is that the NHL was contacted directly from the Commissions and Gambling Board. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's actually what they're called, or
So
something about that.
yeah.
Um,
No, it makes sense.
yeah, and
So
that's where it's coming from. So you do a lot more of that. You're more
yeah.
familiar in
So
that
at the
world.
end of the
So
day, this was like it was like we all seen it by now. I'm sure he's cutting the commercial. Tim Peel. Now I guess now it's confirmed that it was him that basically he says on a microphone and it goes over the broadcast, so ever all that home fans hear it. You can't hide from it. That
mm,
yeah, I've been waiting to give Nashville a penalty. I just needed to give them a penalty to kind of like essentially even it up, and we like, and that's sparked this whole debate about makeup calls and all that. But like you said, from the gambling side of the perspective, it creates a lot of worrisome for the gambling board and the whole ethics board and all that stuff. Like, hey, we're putting like millions and millions of dollars are exchanging hands on these things. It needs to be on the up and up all the time. Like, if there's any like questionable things, and like sports gambling has this bad rep of like players throwing it starts with college, like shaving points, um Pete Rose betting on games and throwing games, Michael Jordan betting on games. There's been many times in the NBA where refs have been found that they're betting on the games, and then they're like, there's this one instance, I forget exactly the teams in basketball, where it's just atrocious reffing. It turns out later, a couple of years later, that this guy had been bet.
Donahue.
Pardon?
I think his name is Donahue.
I think so. Yeah. So he'd been betting on the game. So like now, like I'm sure Tim Beal has not, like we talked about, has nothing to do with that probably in this situation, but because of all those things, they have nothing else to do but to get rid of this guy, because this board, the whole point of the ethics board and all that is to make sure that this kind of thing isn't happening. And then with this out there, the NHL's got to answer the question now, like, what is this? What is going on here? And they don't really have a real answer, because like you said, it's the unwritten rule of makeup calls. It's the unwritten rule of got to even out calls. Like this guys, they've gotten 3 penalties in a row, so they can't get the 4th penalty, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It's unwritten.
Manage the game, as I've heard a million people say.
Yeah, manage the way the game's playing. Yeah, I've heard that a bunch the past couple days. But I really hope that this opens up the eyes that if we're, like, with America legalizing sports betting over these next couple years, like, it's got to be by the book. And that's what we've talked about on many episodes now, like why the hell don't they do it? It makes no sense. And hopefully this is the wake-up call that it has. And I'm going to go to the NFL. I really feel like they're starting to do that a lot more. I know people they say the refs have that impact on the game, but I really like that they basically are trying at least to call the game as it is.
And like when it comes to hockey, the thing that annoys me right now is specifically like the cross-checking. I said this in our chat group too, is you hear everybody talk about Shea Weber. Shea Weber is amazing because he's big, he's aggressive, he's abrasive. He doesn't let you go to the net without getting a bruise for it. Like he blocks shots, he'll punch you in the face. Like he's that kind of guy. So like when he cross-checks somebody in the front of the net, he's just being Weber. Like Weber's just being Weber, and like, 1, 2, okay, Weber, chill, no more. Okay, he stopped. Okay, no penalties. But meanwhile, you have one of your star players that you're trying to market and sell around to grow the league, and now they missed 2 or 4 games because of a broken rib or something. How is that good for your game on top of the betting? And like, just for the record, I don't want to see everything called. I don't want to see 7 power plays to 6. Like, that's not what I want to see. I don't want to see zero flow to the game. But what I don't want to see is, like, it's the same thing like after the lockout when they stiffen the penalties. There was that 10-game learning curve where, there was like 12 penalties a game and it was too much. But then they learned. After that 10 games, it settled down. They knew what the line was. They knew what the consistency was. And they knew, don't do that because you'll be in the box. And then every year it slowly loosens up. And one thing that Dave Poulin, who is a former GM in the league, said today on TSN, he was just saying that, crap, I totally lost the train of my thought. I hate when that happens.
Dave Poulin saying it loosens up, the calls loosen up.
Oh, he was just saying about how the calls change in regular season versus playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
You build a team that might be offensive, and they get 4 or 5 power plays a night. They're a top 5 power play team. They get their success through the power play. Then you go to the playoffs, and there's 1 or 2 power plays given a night. Well, now that team's star players aren't in the same groove, you're now playing 5-on-5 for more ice time. So now the guys lower in your lineup are being depended on more, which means they're more important.
Yep.
Where another team like the Leafs have the better high-end players. So why would you have a regular season that benefits or is set up one way to completely flop the way it's played in the playoffs just because that's how it is and that's how the physical being is? Like, decide the bar you want to have it at, decide the precedent, and call it.
Yeah.
Allow flow, call the penalty.
I think I would actually like them to call it consistently in the playoffs, because like if even like a penalty's a penalty, so like for instance a little hook in the season might get called that won't get called in the playoffs, but if that's called as well in the playoffs, they're not going to do it, which might open the door for someone like McDavid, who's super fast, to make that flashy highlight playoff goal that everyone wants to see in overtime or whatever. Otherwise, they're going to get a penalty.
Instead, we want to respect the guys who are defensive shutdown wingers and shut down the McKinnon in the playoffs. So why hasn't McKinnon scored? Oh, well, this great two-way winger, the Marian Hosas or the whatever of the past that shut down the star players.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like, and exactly what you say. And like, that's the thing that drives me the most nuts, because like when I play hockey, I'm very loose with my wrists. So like if somebody just touches my wrist, it can throw everything off. Because like it depends on the angle of my stick and
Yep.
everything, whether I'm trying to saucer it, how high, how hard, everything is all timed and methodically thought of. So just a little tap or a little push
Yeah, and that's why
off
I
of
don't
what I'm
like
expecting screws everything up.
when people are going on breakaways and the defenseman's on them and he's just like tapping them with his stick. Like, and that part's never called, but I don't understand how that is not like. How are you allowed to do that? Like, to just keep tapping them as you're chasing them?
I'm okay if you're like tapping his pants and it's not pushing his legs, it's not obstructing him from striding. You're just trying to get in his head that like, buddy, I'm here. I have no problem with that.
Okay.
But if there's any stick turned around a gut or push on the back of the legs that makes the stride get affected, that I want called. Absolutely. Yeah, because I used to do that all the time. You hit them on the pants or you hit them on the one side of the body,
Yeah, I
and they
see
think you're over
everybody do
here.
it.
Yeah,
It's always been one of my
it's mental,
Yeah, okay.
right?
I guess
So like I get that. Like you make them think, oh, somebody's over here, and maybe they go backhand, and then in their mind, oh shit, somebody's over there, and they fuck up, and the puck dribbles into the corner. So like sometimes you can get into the mental, and if it's a mental, we'll call it a mental penalty, but like it's mentally affecting how you perform. I don't want to see
the Sean Avery penalty.
Yeah, well, I don't want to see that either, but still. I actually at the time didn't think there was anything wrong with that, but at the same time, if you're gonna stand with your back to the play and get hit with a slap shot in your back, you're just a moron.
Well, to be honest,
like,
it seems worth it. Like it was genius, really. They had to make a rule about it because it was so good.
He's out of the crease.
Yep.
I didn't think there was anything within the rule book that's like, obviously it was silly.
There wasn't at the time, and that's why they had to make the rule, though. Right?
Yeah, and like it was silly, and like you don't want to see that in an NHL game. People like a 6'7" monster just going like this, trying to block. Like you don't want to open the door to that.
Yeah, of course.
But like at the time, I didn't see why there was such an outrage about it. But
it's just because of who it was.
Yeah. But yeah. Back to the referees. I mean, I don't know. I think it's up to them, really. The one thing that was brought up today that I actually really liked is you'll like this one in baseball. Do you remember a couple of years ago, what is it, Armando Galarraga almost had the perfect game?
Yeah, and Joyce ruined it.
Joe West, or whatever his name is,
Joyce.
He called Joyce West? Oh, okay.
His last name's Joyce.
Oh, okay.
I don't know,
whatever his name is. Yeah. So anyways, he after the event, he came out the next day and he said, like, I screwed up, whatever. He took ownership. He explained his situation, explained what he was thinking, whatever. That's like to the full degree. But like, again, I've said this probably 3 times already. Like the NHL should log, similar to what Shanahan did, and log these events. Why aren't they? There should be videos available for you or I or whoever to go on and be like, I'm a newbie. I got really confused last night, and no one can explain to me why this happened or why that happened. Well, hey, I can go here and watch this 2-minute video that explains to me, you know, if I watch this 3 months in the future and I see the same situation, I now know what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, it's only smart, so I don't understand why they don't do it. And it only adds to this whole mystique and secret kind of chat and talk about how much of this rigging is going on. And that is the problem. I don't think that there's any discussion or dispute that it happens.
Agreed.
It's the dispute on how much. And then it's always comes down to the situation. If you're the team, it's tied 4-4 in the 3rd period of the 2nd round, and there's a call that you believe should have been called, but it wasn't called because it was in the last 2 minutes of the game. It doesn't matter. It should have been called. And then you have a whole fan base that's annoyed.
Yeah.
So, and maybe doesn't care as much or considers it not as legit because they're like, I've seen 10 other times it's called a penalty and now it's not because of no particular reason. And now the team I spent the whole year cheering for is going home and golfing because of some play that I can't really explain. And now I'm annoyed. And now I don't know if I want to commit like next year as much
anymore,
like that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, we need to get it more simple. And I hope something comes of it. The NHL hasn't even come out really and addressed it other than firing, right? They're not. So
they've said like nothing, which I could say might have something to do with if it is with that whole betting thing.
Yeah,
it can't really come out and say or do anything, right? It's all got to kind of be hush and hush. So maybe, but like I don't know, man.
I hope it creates some sort of dialogue at the very least behind the scenes of what the hell, we can't have this anymore. But
Yeah.
I doubt it will. I don't have faith. They've not given me reason to have faith. So.
Well, I mean, talking about faith, I don't think there's a lot of teams who have faith in their goaltenders right now. I don't really think we need to dive that deep into this. It was more so just a point I wanted to bring up because we were chatting about it offline, just about goalies and is this a changing of the guard of goalies, or is this just because of COVID and the whole platoons? Is it just a short season and people just aren't in the rhythm and they don't care? Do you think what are you going to see in the crease moving forward?
I think it's going to be moving forward. The platoon thing's going to be a lot more of a reality. I think just like we've talked. I think we've talked about it, but like with athletic science and the way it's going, and just like how in basketball, even there like these maintenance days here and there. Like I think just seeing the longevity of goalies being like the performance coming from not playing as much, maybe like 50 game max kind of seasons. I think teams are gonna do that, but I also do think there's a lot to be said about the math and the analytics of not spending on goalie and having $2 maybe $3 million goalies as well. Like instead of spending 8-9 million on a amazing number one goalie, maybe two decent goalies at 5 million.
Yeah, I hope one gets hot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I gotta say that's like the Flyers are just terrible. They might lose worse than the last week right now. They're on pace to lose worse.
You think so?
It's 5-0.
What is it? Oh my god.
I know I said this before, but I can't pronounce the coach's name. He's got to be the next to go, and he might very well be fired after this game because they lost 9.
Who's the coach there? Laviolette?
Yeah, Laviolette. Blah. So they lost 9-0 to the Rangers last week, and then they did okay the following game, and now they're down 5-0 to the Rangers again. So it might be the end.
Which the Rangers are just a team that are deep, that work hard. So that just shows you that the Flyers are kind of, or it suggests the Flyers are a bit more skill and a little bit less of the hard work.
Yeah, I don't know, but
yeah, I like Philly, but like there's something that's not right. And I've been saying for a while, like the way that I see Philly is they were the team that was kind of building well. They were trying to compete, and they ended up getting some really nice pieces. I really liked what they're building. Mm-hmm. But then they ended up with like 3 or 4 really decent, really, I wouldn't say top end, but like middle high end prospects on the back end that they're like, we're going to take our time. We're going to take our time and just do it right. But then when the time came for them to get the minutes and play in the minors or whatever, they never did. And they're like, oh, well, they'll be that guy. And then after 2 or 3 years of being like, hey, go ahead, play in the NHL, and him not being successful, it's like, I feel they would have been better off to be like, hey, these are our 2 or 3 guys we like, not 3 or 4, and commit to those guys, give them the minutes, play them on the penalty kill, play them on the power play in the AHL, see what you have. Don't try to get, 4 or 5 guys that work, because it's not going to work that way.
Yeah, it's definitely, they definitely got something going on. And I don't see how their coach can survive like back-to-back 9-0 losses to the Rangers. Like he could be fired by next podcast. Not even next podcast, by tomorrow.
Maybe tonight. Yeah, I think you might have the right call with that being the next coach. If there's another coach fired, it might be him for sure.
All right, you want to talk about predictions coming up next week? We're going to be doing that next. I think we're going to try to do it next week. I think you already touched on it actually this podcast. Was that it? Basically, just next week we're going to try to do trade deadline predictions. Who has potential to get traded? Who we think where they're going to go? Who it's a good fit, not et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, go over some names, see if we like them, see if they're just names that are being thrown about that don't. I mean, you know how it is. Sometimes names hit the market and it's like, this guy's not moving. Like, who would have interest in this guy? Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's guys that just, they probably won't even be healthy. So like they probably won't get moved. So we'll go through some lists of different positions and see, make some predictions, see if we hit any of them.
I like it.
See what happens.
Sounds good to me.
But in terms of trading, anyways, the two things I wanted to quickly mention on top of the trades, more so in the NHL world, obviously, is that Patrick Marleau. It came out that Patrick Marleau would be willing to take a trade or accept a trade to a contender. And it made me question that Patrick Marleau is only 33 games back of the all-time game played record.
That shocked me. I didn't think he would be the guy that like that. I guess it makes sense. Like he doesn't miss games.
Sharks made the playoffs every year, right? And he did every game for 12 seasons or whatever it was.
So he could be the all-time like even though if he doesn't get traded, he won't get it this season. He'll play another season, I'm sure. Maybe not.
Well, maybe, but if he gets traded to a contender and goes deep in the playoffs, he might do it this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
so that's all I wanted to bring up, and just I don't think he has a lot of value, and I don't see why a team would give anything really up unless it was like,
he could just be
hey, here's this 22-year-old filler on our taxi squad that we won't retain. Let's get him on our taxi squad just in case we run into like 4 injuries. It's better to lean on him than a kid. That's the only way I can see it.
So it's not. Does he even make the lineup of a contender exactly? To get those extra
He's
games.
A taxi squad guy.
Yeah, so
there's a lot of talk in Toronto right now about
but it wouldn't help his games played.
Perry. Well, no, but it could in the playoffs if there's injuries, right? Like
the Leafs
if he's
acquire
obviously if he remains.
Who'd you say the Leafs acquiring? Barry?
No, I forget who I said.
Okay, you said there's a lot of talk about the Leafs. Oh, Perry.
Oh, yeah, Perry, because they want him for the taxi squad. They want to add depth because our taxi squad in Toronto has a couple kids on it that are unproven. I think they have potential, but like they're unproven, right? So you get 2 or 3 injuries. Now you're depending on a kid in the playoffs. I'd rather have a guy like Marleau or Perry where I can say, hey, I need you for a few games. You won't hurt me. You won't be amazing, but you won't hurt me.
No, that makes sense, but... Well, okay.
I just wanted to bring up Marleau because I thought that was interesting that it came out. I don't think there's a ton of interest in him, but I think obviously that's San Jose putting that out there to try and find him somewhere to play, which I think at this point the league is on the side of trying to get him to play 33. I wouldn't be surprised if he's back next year, even if it's he plays one every games, 2 or 3 games. Yeah,
and it might
just
be
to get there.
It might be with the Sharks because they need players that they don't have to pay, and
that's true.
And
that's true. That's a good call.
And they can actually just make the argument like he's a Sharks legend. So let's give him some.
Yeah. Just bring him back. Keep rolling him out there. But the one number that just blew me back, which I think the key to the trade market after finding this out, I think I found who the key is to all these trades. It's the Chicago Blackhawks.
Okay.
The Chicago Blackhawks have $26 million worth of available cap on LTIR. In other words, they could take on prorated $26 million of cap
this year.
Now, yeah, I don't think they're going to take on any bad contracts moving forward, but I think they're going to be involved in retaining for other players. So, like, for example, Buffalo. Buffalo can't really afford to retain much money, but some other team could pay Chicago to get Hall or pay Buffalo and Chicago to send Hall through Chicago to retain 50.
Mm-hmm.
And then Buffalo could retain 50. Chicago could retain 50 of what's left. So if you take 8, obviously 4, you could get a prorated Hall for $2 million through Chicago. You have to pay a lot, but again,
hell, Chicago could just take Hall.
Good. Or exactly that. They could say, hey, you 3 teams in the East that are tied up in contracts, send us that player.
Yeah. Oh,
free, and we'll just get better.
You always find those cool things. I would never found that.
Yeah, so like that's insane. Like the Leafs retained 50% of Leonard's contract last year at the deadline, and they got, I believe, a 5th rounder for doing so. So they got a 5th rounder for eating like $0.8 million, like for a full year. rated. So like if somebody's eating 2, 3, 4 million, that's probably the asset value of like a second rounder or maybe like a B minus
I
prospect.
like it.
Like that's sick. That's sick for Chicago. Yeah, just wanted to bring that up because I think
That's
they're going to
cool.
be
Yeah.
the key to get these cap guys. They're the teams restricted with cap. They're going to be the key to figuring this all out.
Yeah.
And
For
then they're
sure.
going to be amazing because they get all these assets for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look
No,
at Chicago.
they have all these. Yeah. Back to the Chicago's. Yeah.
Yeah, they won't be too bad for too long. They just need a goalie, which is funny. I didn't have this as a topic, but I know I asked you in the past. I was talking with a couple people today as well. Just Tuukka Rask. I'm certain he's leaving Boston, so I'm just kind of looking around to see at what possible fits he could have, depending on cap. Rask might go to Chicago. If no one else is offering him tons of money, why wouldn't Chicago step in and be like, "Here you go"?
Yeah. It's a good point.
Like, he'd be a great fit there. It's historic. He wouldn't be quite a cup contender,
I'm
but with
excited
him
to see
and
this
one
goalie
of the East,
market
maybe.
after
Yeah, it's gonna
because
be
I was
fun.
only looking at goalies today, so to get ready for next week, and I'm excited to see because there's some good names out there coming up. All right,
It's gonna be
do you
fun.
want to get into everybody's favorite segment of the
Let's
week?
do it. Let's do it.
3 stars time.
Woo!
Can you tell I'm hyped? All right, so I guess I'm gonna kick things off with my 3rd star of the week, and this is specifically because he had a monster game last night. Andrew Kopp, 5 goals in the past 4 games, 4 of them coming last night, and the Winnipeg Jets are pretty much steamrolling their way to possibly a 2nd place, and now I guess they've closed in as well with Edmonton on the Leafs. The Leafs gap isn't as big as it once was, and they're very much in the hunt. So I want to give some props to the Jets, playing good. Hellebuyck's
Can I
playing
just say,
good.
sorry, I just want to say something
Yeah,
quick about Winnipeg. They scare the shit out of me
they
as a Leaf
should.
fan.
They should.
They're also going to acquire one of the top 2 defensemen on the trade market, whether it's Savard or whether it's Ekholm or Ellis.
Yep.
I'm certain now that it's Winnipeg. Winnipeg or Boston are probably going to be the 2 teams who get one of those 2 guys. And I am now not certain the Leafs will be the top team in the division. I think it's going to be Winnipeg. But that being said,
yeah. No, I want to give
just
props
wanted
to
to say
Winnipeg
that.
too, and that Andrew Kopp just
Yeah.
coming off that game, and Hellebuck, I could easily maybe give it to him. He's had 2 monster games back to back now, but yeah, he's my 3rd star in Winnipeg. They're definitely someone to be talking about, and we'll probably be talking about a lot more coming up in the next couple podcasts. All right, so for like my second first star, it's like a combination, and I know you picked up one of these players too. Like all around, the Colorado Avalanche have been on a tear, and before I give it into it, they do need a backup goalie. So my second star I gave to Nathan MacKinnon, 10 points, 4 goals. 3 of the games of the past 4 games were 3-point games. So he got 9 points in 3 games, which is pretty insane. He's finally heating up, coming back from that injury. It took him a little bit, but he's starting, and the whole star line is just kicking ass. Mikko Rantanen, he was my second star with him. I'll give him 5 goals in the past 4 games, so he's getting a lot of the goals. And it really, they're playing good on as a team, as a whole unit, and it's making this man my number 1 star. It's making him look good, probably a lot better than he is, but I still think he's a decent goalie. So Philip Grubauer is my number 1 star, and when he's in net, the Avalanche have won 7 in a row. He's gotten 2 shutouts. One of the games he came in relief because the backup goalie was getting slaughtered. They were down 4-2 halfway through the game. He came in. He held the net and let no goals in that game, so it doesn't count as a shutout, but no goals. And they won. I think they ended up winning like 7-4 or something crazy. And of the other 4 games other than that, he's letting 1 goal. So I have to give it to him. They play great in front of him as a defensive team in general, and they've just been putting up tons of shots. But
yeah.
Not much.
And I mean, for the record, Philip Grubauer, like I like him as a goalie. I think he's a very good goalie. But my problem with him, or my concern, or scare factor with him, is that I cannot trust him to play 50 games in a row without having an injury.
Yeah, He has
and
not been able to not. He's always gotten injured since he's come
always,
to Colorado. So I agree with
even
that.
in Washington beforehand,
Yep.
he had injuries. He had problems staying in the net, and that's part of why they chose to stay with Holtby at the time and get rid of Grubauer, because there was talk they're going to trade Holtby and keep Grubauer, but they're just unsure. Plus, Washington also had Vanacek and some other young goalies and stuff that made it easier to
they had to make
on.
sacrifices for sure.
Exactly, but the concern is that inevitably, when Grubauer does go down, whether it's for 2 games, 6 games, 8 games, you have to have a guy that can be ready to go like that.
And they don't have that,
notice.
and
they don't.
And of those, so they're. Notice I say they've won 7 in a row when he's in net. They don't win when the backup's in the net. The backup was in the net in their last game against who should be an easy, like, in terms of Grubauer's in net. Arizona, they got 1 goal on him and they scored with 3 minutes left in the game. They set their backup in the net. It's like, I don't even remember his name. It's some other. It wasn't even Hunter Miska. It was someone else, Johansson or something.
Yeah, I don't remember. Oh yeah, the guy they got from Buffalo.
Is that where? Yeah. So it's that guy. He lets in 5 goals or 4 goals, like when in the course of like 20 shots. Like they need. Either they play poor. I don't think they do, but they just need someone. They need someone, and that's got to be what they're doing on the trade deadline. I'd be shocked and appalled. I'd be appalled if they don't address that situation.
And I'm sure they have confidence in Francouz or Francouz coming back. But you can't depend on that. Like, you got to use that as the lotto ticket. You got to have Grubauer plus guy X with Francouz coming back. And then if Grubauer gets hurt, then you have this guy X plus Francouz when he comes back, and you're still fine. If Colorado doesn't address this for the 2nd year in a row, which again, I said I think that cost them last year. They could have gone further in the playoffs. If they do it again and get knocked out, there'll be 2 chances at a cup that they've ruined because they've just failed to address an important spot. And I don't think that that's acceptable.
I agree. Totally agree.
We'll see where that goes. But Colorado's heating up right now, and it scares the freaking shit out of me. I think they're going to be dynamic as hell here on out.
Yeah, totally. As a Vegas fan, it's not fun to watch, but also as a fantasy owner of 3 Colorado on my main team, I like it.
Yeah. Well, I think at this point the 2 teams are reigning supreme in that division. I think that's Colorado, Vegas, and I'd be shocked if we didn't see those 2 teams make the Final 4 for their respective division. And that's
they're in the same division.
Hell of a series.
Oh yeah.
That's what I'm saying is that they probably won't play each other first round, right? So they'll probably face. They'll probably be the winners in first round and then face off for that division. But yeah, they look good. I mean, I have one of them too, but we'll get there. The first star I have, or third star I should say, is Philip Gustafson. Now, I know most people probably have no idea who this guy is. I actually brought him up on a previous podcast. Yeah, I brought him up on a previous podcast, I think 3 or 4 ago. I don't remember exactly why I brought him up, but I did bring him up just about a potential future guy. I mean, Ottawa's like 6 down their depth chart on their goalies. So at this point, they're just trying to put a guy in that's under contract, right?
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it's this kid. This kid's got huge potential. He was the Swedish junior goalie for the last 2 years. I don't know if you paid a whole close attention to the juniors tournament, but Sweden's been one of the powerhouses, and he has been one of the reasons why. He's big, he's athletic, he's strong. I think he's probably going to be the goalie of the Senators when the Senators are where they are, or when they get to where they want to get to. Obviously, it's way too early, but I just think he deserves credit because he went 2-0 with a 1.01 goals against and a .969 save percentage for the Ottawa Senators. So, I mean, he's got them on a mini winning streak here. So I think he deserves a shout out for that. Trend of goalies, obviously.
Of course, you love the goalies, which is good.
Course.
We got to give the props to the guys that stop the puck,
right? Sometimes if they deserve it, anyways. Second star, I actually wasn't going to give it to him, but then when I realized the stats he's put up, I don't think it would have done any justice if neither of us mentioned it. Yeah, and we just sat here and drooled over Colorado all night. But UC Saros, 3 games, .067 goals against, 2 wins, overtime loss, or might have been shootout, but one of them, and a .983 save percentage. Nashville can't really score these days, so he's just trying to do what he can.
Yep.
I don't think he's going to make another appearance in the 3 stars again, but hey, anybody can have
Yeah, you
one
never
one
know.
moment in the sun.
Exactly.
So the first star is the other guy we can drool over Colorado with, and that's Gabrielle Landisgog. 3 goals, 6 points, 3 power play points in the last 3 games. Not as hot as McKinnon, but still putting up points. He's more their leader, kind of in the
Captain, yeah.
change room, and like he's the guy, but he's not necessarily the guy in the fantasy world or the production world. But he definitely deserves the props. He's seems like he's been in Colorado forever, and it seems like when he first came in the league, everyone's like, this is the leader of all leaders, and then he just disappeared for a couple of years. I think part of it had to do with some injuries and whatnot, but something tells me that he is going to be a monster in the playoffs this year. I think if Colorado goes to the Cup, I think Landeskog could be the reason why. Obviously, McKinnon is up too, but I think he could be the guy that really
That's good. Yeah, he
has his
brings
career.
he brings so much to that team.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And just while we're at it, and just a little quick update on the Rangers game. They've now got 6 goals. Zibanejad having another career night, 5 points. So is he trying to beat last time? So we'll give him an honorable mention because he'll likely, like we talked about, he'll likely not be able to put up crazy. But maybe we'll talk about him next week. Who knows? 3 stars, but
yeah,
just crazy. Just crazy. He likes the Philly Flyers. But that concludes our 3 stars. Congratulations to all the participants. Yada yada yada.
Sorry, I was just checking here because I wanted to see. I know I've been called crazy a couple times today because I've been rooting for Ilya Sorokin to take over the net in Long Island.
Yeah.
And they had an interview of the coach the other day, and he said that he basically paraphrasing. He said if Varlamov continues to let the door open, then he might not be the one still starting when the dust settles.
Yeah.
And Sorokin's got 2 of the last 3 starts. He's put up substantially better statistics during that time. Varlamov lost 2 in a row and 3 of 5, which for the Islanders, that's not fantastic. And I mean, I think a lot of people would have said Varlamov wasn't as good as the stats he had been putting up to begin with.
Yeah.
If he continues to falter, I think Sorokin could be another guy that we talk about a lot down the stretch here. And I'm excited about that because I own him in fantasy. Shall we go to get to some hockey games?
Yeah, I'm down for that. I'm gonna stop this recording. I just want to talk fantasy for a sec.